Hey guys, Murasak here. Today we're going to be talking about the latest controversy related to Offkai Expo, a very well-known VTuber convention now celebrating its 5th generation, and the kind of weird sponsorship they decided to do together with Fansly. Yes, that Fansly. So apparently they're getting a sponsor, a very 18 plus sponsor. Fansly is the best 18 plus site to find your next Aussie and so much more. Now, to make it worse, because this is obviously not the very end, Offkai Expo also announced another sponsor, or I'm getting sponsor, I guess, some sort of collaboration with vbimbo. Yes, we're talking about a very clearly 18 plus group of VTubers. Here are their models that are going to be featured at the Offkai Expo. Glitches, Glitter, Girl Bossery, and one brain cell for 4 people, one to rule them all. A lot of people are very upset about this, and I can honestly understand why. I am also upset to a very significant extent. Indie VTubing, especially EN indie VTubing, has been slowly deteriorating in quality and in how it presents itself in a way. When I personally think about VTubers, I think about big corpo VTubers. I typically think also about Japanese VTubers who typically are able to maintain themselves and present themselves as idol. And I do see also a lot of VTubers in the indie space, in the EN indie space, who are also like, they're there for entertainment, they're there primarily for fun, and they are able to present themselves in a, like a fun, neutral, entertaining way. Obviously, the VTuber space itself is kind of like quote-unquote sex positive, I would say, because it's very open to all sorts of like dirty jokes. But that's primarily teen-level dirty jokes, so slightly horny, but not overly sexual, as is the case obviously with Fansly. We are talking about pics of starfish, and I don't mean animals. You know, guys, what I mean, right? Obviously you do. So this is a bit of a problem here, and the fact that this is very prominently being advertised and linked to a conference, to a con, that is supposed to be all ages and open for everyone and family friendly and what's not. This is absolutely disgusting, honestly. This should not be happening. And it's funny because I'm gonna get into the details of this, but imagine this. The gender balance has changed over the years, and women, of course, have gained a lot more influence in the world, in a lot of different hobbies. But it's very, very fascinating that, given the choice, a lot of women decided to go into some kind of sex work. To me, personally, it's very, very strange. We're going to get into the reasons. But one of the problems that I think are very well pointed out regarding Offkai itself is that the Fansly booth, I'm assuming there's going to be a booth, and also all of the 18 plus stuff is going to in fact be at the main stage. Yes, this is pointed out here by Proctor, that the booth would be in the main minor accessible exhibition hall. And apparently this has been a thing that has been happening with a lot of different cons before, because there's apparently Bad Dragons who sells massive dragon dildos, and apparently they also have been at a main con floor at all major cons. And I'm like, what are we doing here? What is wrong with you people? Like, for the love of God, are you guys okay? Whenever I go to a convention, obviously not in California, Jesus Christ, but whenever I go to a convention, and there's always an 18 plus section, that makes total sense. Conventions are kind of all ages, but they obviously have like 18 plus content as well. Now the thing is that all 18 plus content is typically either on a completely separate floor. If you go, you are ID checked at the stairs, at the staircase, in front of the stairs. no one's gonna let you through, or sorry, not even in front of the stairs. Sometimes it's just like the entire section that has all of the 18 plus stuff. It is completely kind of locked off and accessible only to adults. It's either going to be a separate floor, or it's going to be like a closed off section from, I wouldn't really say main hall. Usually it's kind of like a side hall, like a smaller hall on the same floor as the main hall. But it is typically in somehow, segregated, somehow cut off from access by minors. And it makes total sense. Like, it's really 18 plus stuff. I'm talking like nudity, dildos, what have you. This is completely normal at cons. Many of these things are kind of mentioned also in the plans, mentioned in like the schedules and everything in the program, but they're not mentioned in like a overly explicit way, in the sense that there's like, Bad Dragon, for instance, in an entire range of dildos, on the main website of the con. That does not happen. That should not be happening, because it's just kind of gross, to be honest. It's kind of out there. Now that is one thing. I do not like this. I don't think that this is where the VTubing space should be going in general. It shouldn't be overrun and kind of transform into yet another extra horny, extra goonery 18 plus spaces, where now a lot of the girls, for instance, who go into VTubing, they don't do this because they are interested in VTubing, they want to become actual VTubers, but they want to sell their asses. That is simply the reality of it. And they do have like an OnlyFans, they do have a Fansly as well. And the VTubing itself is basically like just the initial hook. They pay out, they get a model, the model is super horny, they sell themselves for the model, but then they start selling their pics as well, of their feet and asses and everything. And at that point, like, you're not really a VTuber, you're just an e-bimbo, pretty much. That is my opinion on this. I don't think this is in any way controversial. But what I find very, very interesting is that how susceptible women are to this kind of like weird brainwashing that being an e-bimbo and having an OnlyFans or being like a titty streamer on Twitch, for instance, is somehow empowering, because you have the power of consent and you willingly agree to whore yourself out. Great. But also consider this. You are being economically incentivized to actually do this. There's a lot of girls who are content creators on OnlyFans and who have very massive followings. They will encourage other girls that they should absolutely try doing OnlyFans as soon as they turn 18. This is not a joke. Now, the big difference is that the creators who are making obviously like hundreds and thousands and everything and millions on OnlyFans are just the tip of the iceberg. They're kind of like one percenters of the platform. If you just go in and if you just try to want to make money of it with, showing your entire body essentially, just like this, you are not magically going to make big cash. You might be making like 100 a month, 200 a month. Ask yourself, is it worth showing your entire body to people online who can probably very easily recognize you for $200 a month? Is this really what you want to be doing with your life? Like, for real. And it's very funny because then a lot of these horny VTubers are twisting themselves in a pretzel and being like, it is misogynistic. The internet has become truly misogynistic. Girl, you're an e-ho. I'm pretty sure you are aware of this. There is nothing to be ashamed of here, but also please do not blame the entire internet for noticing. And as I said, some people, some women are unfortunately very susceptible to this, and yeah, can apparently convince them, from what I can tell. That is simply the way it is. And of course, there are more comments like this one. Slut shaming in the year 2026 is so cringe, bro, especially within the VTuber community. As I mentioned, VTuber community is kind of like teenage level, horny and kind of very encouraging of this. She's not making not suitable content herself, but she loves and respects the hell out of friends who do this. See, I don't in general have a problem with VTubers kind of doing like horny VTubing, doing like ASMR and selling this as content. I absolutely do not have a problem with this. But also kind of do be aware what you are doing, right? Like I see, like for instance, some of the girls from VLR, they're completely self-aware that what they're doing is just kind of whoring themselves. And that's fine. You're an adult, you do, what you like to do. And also VTubing itself gives you this chance that you don't actually have to show your body, which is even better. I would say it's quote unquote more ethical, if one could say that, makes more sense. But in this case, it's like you need to finally come to this realization that if you are using your VTuber persona to actually just promote your body on the side, and the first thing you do is you have a model and like a month later you're already sharing your OnlyFans and sharing your Fansly, you're no longer a VTuber. That is simply how the rules of engagement in VTubing work. You lose a part of your anonymity and you stop being a VTuber. And this seems to be like a lot of these kind of, when it's perennial, not really, but some of these other communities have experienced a similar influx of e-girls and then e-bimbos later on. Like apparently the golf community as well. The golf aesthetic has been completely captured by girls who now try to capitalize and monetize it by showing their bum holes. Actually, yes, it is quite something. Not the bum holes, I mean the whole thing is just a little outrageous. And I would kind of wish for VTubing to stay a little more grounded, a little more for everyone really, and not to be overrun and not to be overly sexualized when it doesn't really need to. Like the kind of, level of teasing you get in ASMR, for instance, or some of the models, some of the VTuber models having like, I don't know, bigger boobs or something. I think this is completely fine. It's still within reason, but when you're now turning this into some kind of, what is it called, entrepreneurial path into and monetizing your own body, you are no longer in VTubing. You are just doing exactly the same thing that all of the Twitch streamer girls do. All of the ones who, jump around on balls and show their boobs. But this is essentially the very same thing. And so, to kind of summarize, I do partially agree with what Toxicuma here mentioned, is that OnlyFans and Fansly are quietly ruining the VTuber space. Also, I would say probably Twitch, probably TikTok, probably all of these high accessibility, kind of low effort of entry platforms. What started as a creative anime avatars, gaming, singing, and I wish that I could kind of state that's still the case in Japan, for instance. When new VTubers debut with heavy, not suitable for work models, and they immediately push subs, PPVs, no idea, and loot content instead of building actual streaming skills or lore, or just doing like, maintaining their VTuber persona, this apparently very quickly disappears. The cute idol wife culture that made VTubing special is getting drowned in low effort Coomer bait. I also am going to be perfectly honest, I very often do not interact with the indie VTuber space because it's simply not really for me. I do interact mostly or am watching mostly kind of high profile and indie VTubers who are, VTubers, not booby girls. But they're talented, suitable for work creators. They get outpaced by someone who just sells thighs and moans, and that is unfortunately true. The barrier to entry dropped from be entertaining to have a sexy model and an OnlyFans link in the bio. The audience is shifting as well. There is the more sexual angle that I am seeing in VTubing, but there's also the broader angle of VTubing, especially in the EN indie space, who are not really into VTubing for VTubing's sake, who are not weeps, who are not for the kind of like niche hobby. They're mostly there for, I don't really know what, promote themselves, I'm assuming, and engage in bimbofication of the entire medium. I don't know how else to put it. This is definitely not okay what's happening, and I just kind of wish, well, two things. First, so that the indie VTuber space would kind of more return to just being like a more neutral, more actually VTuber centric space, and not just being a bunch of mean girls who show their booties online. But also, I do strongly encourage people to get out of this indie VTuber space and do explore kind of like the Indonesian, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Korean side of VTubing, to see how VTubing is done as kind of more like an idle endeavor and not just showing your bum or, you know, jumping and making your boobies jump with it. I kind of encourage people to do this because I recently talked to someone on X, and they listed like 5 or 6 VTubers. I've literally never heard of them. And I do notice that the indie VTubing space is actually very insular because it's just people around people within the space, and they don't really get out of that space to look at other creators. And there are, for instance, indie creators like Zentreya who are more VTuber-centric, who definitely have a VTuber persona. They have lore, they're more into it for entertainment. Some that are kind of like, at that point, I would say even bigger size, like Amanogawa Shina, for instance, who are definitely there also for entertainment. I do encourage people to interact with VTubers like that and, you know, enjoy them. But that's basically it for for this topic, and I see you guys in the next one. Mata ne!